everyone for coming. I want you all to have a look at this picture. This picture paints 1,000 words. This is what's left of the water going into Limerick City, where they're going to take the water home to Dublin. This is in a drought situation, and I'm not talking about 30 days without sun. We have several drought situations in the Midwest. We have no oversupply of water. That's the first thing I want to point out. I'll just introduce the members. First of all, thanks to Sharon for organising this. And again, I'm not overly disappointed who's here, who's not here. Before Christmas, myself and Elaine and Kevin met in a hotel in Limerick. There was only 3 of us. By the time we finished putting in the submission into the Eastern Midlands Water Supply Project, there was over 40 of us. Hydrologists, ecologists, barristers, solicitors, environmentalists, all standing together to protect the Midwest. I'll introduce the members. Eamon Stack, second closest to be here, is an engineer and a member of the River Shannon Protection Alliance. Myself, Councillor Seamus Morris, I'm director of the Shannon Protection Alliance. Dr. Phil Bugler to the right of me, Fianna Gael MD, Nina MD, and member of the River Shannon Protection Alliance. Elaine Doyle on the far right is a senior technical project manager, and who pulled all of this together, to be fair to her, and secretary and director of the River Shannon Protection Alliance. And probably one of the most important people we have here is a seasoned angler who knows every ounce of the River Shannon, and probably is the last of his generation of fishermen in his area, because there's no fish to fish at the moment. He is the secretary of the Limerick and District Anglers Club and director of the River Shannon Protection Alliance. So we don't come here without teeth. A few of us have a bit of experience. Nobody would have thought when I was growing up that I'd be a director of any environmental agency, but unfortunately, as you get older, we all get closer to the earth. We won't keep you long, we know you're busy. Who are we? We're the River Shannon Protection Alliance. We were established in April 2007. We're dedicated to safeguarding the River Shannon and its surrounding areas for a fair and future generations. Quite hard to read. Yeah. Okay, we're dedicated to safeguarding the River Shannon and its surrounding ecosystem for us and all future generations. We're committed to see our country investing in sustainable water management practices in the River Shannon. We advocate for responsible stewardship of one of Ireland's premier natural resources and will fight to protect it. Okay, we've had a lot of government failures in this, particularly the oversight of this project. The project has been in development since the mid-1990s. There's been no complete independent public review of the water supply issues from day one by government. 2 reports are required by statute to be brought forward for the purposes of evaluating the proposal, to provide independent review of Ishlay Erin's proposed water supply project. The second one, an external review of Ishlay Erin's proposed water supply preliminary business case under the remit of the Public Spending Course, PSC, external assurance process. The department, the LGH, decided to combine both reports, which should have been independent from each other. This undermines oversight. Missing transparency. The 2018 independent review was never published. That was the Wallenberg report, which I have been searching for since 2018. It was never published. Government failure, again, lack of oversight. 4-year project delivery delay. This was supposed to go to Planning Commission in 2019. The CRU, who were tasked to oversee projects like this, have failed to get data from Ishlay Erin on this. It's critical for the legislative debate, policy driven by pressure and lack of the right narrative, not evidence driven. The pipeline position as the only solution, affordability not demonstrated, approval process compromised, no full compliance with spending rules, no independent valuation, major governance failure, taxpayer risk, privatisation risk, project doubles the assets of Ishgaren. The PPP model introduces private control, position system for future privatisation, and strategic national asset at risk. Now I'll ask Dr. Phil Bulger to talk about the environmental impact.
I'll just fix that slide.
Sorry, I keep forgetting.
No panic.
I should have left you do it when you asked me.
You're all right. There's no panic. Yeah.
Men can't multitask, you know that.
So, yeah, no, yeah.
My name is Councillor Butler. I'm a PhD in organic chemistry. So I suppose my PhD was on cancer therapies for the colon. So I have a bit of experience, I would think, in this field. And I suppose I come from Ballinack, Killaloo, the shores of Lough Derg. And but why am I here today? Because I'm worried. I'm very worried. So I'll just go through it a little bit here. I suppose, judging by what we've seen, we're going to get drought periods in Ireland every 2 years. That means if there's a drought in Ireland, we in the Midwest get it as well as Dublin and the East Coast. So I'm making no difference here. The other thing is that the jet stream has moved, I suppose we all know that. So the East Coast is going to get wetter, as we've seen in February of this year. So we probably in the Midwest are going to suffer more. But besides that, so why am I worried? So the reason I'm worried is, I suppose, if we have a drought period, like I'm living in Ballinack, Killaloo for 32 years. I know rivers fairly well. I lived beside a shore all my life. So sometimes during the summer period, I might have a flow under the old Killaloo Bridge, maybe of 6 cubic metres per second. That's heading down towards Partien and then has to go on further to Ireland, Prussia. If they're going to take 3.2 metres cubed per second out of 6, that's 65% abstraction. If they're taking it out of 10, 3.2 divide that by 10 is 32, and they're saying 4.2 to 40% abstraction. If I get that kind of abstraction in no drought periods, and remember, I don't want to be a drama queen here or to do any scaremongering. For example, in 2018, we had 74 days of drought period, hose ban, no flows. I mean, Ireland Prussia didn't turn those 4 turbines because they didn't have it. So, again, last August we had 30 days of drought periods, no flows. So, if it's a drought period, we don't have the water. So we don't even have the water that's dedicated to go down our the Partien Weir. Statutory ESB are supposed to go down 10 metres cubed per second down Partien. I have looked at the data since 1932 of the daily rates going through Partien. On average, 280 days out of 365, they were not able to meet that statutory requirement of 10 cubic metres. So it's no wonder that the old river Shannon is dying on its feet. Just to give you some statistic, if look at agriculture was a great idea, but it's probably too big, because at most times you can only run 2 turbines instead of 4. But agriculture, we had 440,000 salmon in Lough before agriculture. Now, because they didn't put in the proper fish pass, etc., we have 124 getting through. Okay, so last year 124 salmon got up into Lough from 440,000. So our fish industry, our salmon industry has been decimated. Only for the coarse fish in the pipe, we wouldn't have an industry. Okay, so let's get back to the environment for a minute. So if we have, I'm not comparing you. If we have low flow periods, I'm talking maybe 10 cubic meters coming through the old, 10 cubic meters per second coming through the old bridge at Killaloe. So what's going to happen is we're going to get what you all call algae bloom, but it's actually a bacteria. It's cyanobacteria, it's blue-green bacteria. So how does this form? If you have nitrates and phosphates going in from wastewater treatment plant, because most of them don't have tertiary treatment plants, even like the one that's upgraded in Ballina at the moment, you get growth of plants. You need more bacteria to break that down, and from that comes the blue-green cyanobacteria. That is toxic. And so make a similarity with Lough Neagh. Lough Neagh has got very bad since 23. Remember, Lough Neagh is 3.3 times the size of Lough Derg. Lough Neagh, they're abstracting for 40% of the population, which is roughly 1.9 million in Northern Ireland, so roughly whatever that is, 500,000. Ishmael proposed to abstract from us for 50% of the population, 2.7 million. So, and we're on 1/3 the size of Lough Neagh. So we will get this blue-green cyanobacteria a lot faster. We have it already. So what you're pumping to Dublin is water coming from Lough Derg, which has already got cyanobacteria. To treat that water, you have to put in large amounts of chlorine. And now I'm going to do a little bit of chemistry for a minute. So what happens then is you already have organic matter in that water. By organic matter, I mean soil, some form of carbon. That reacts with the chlorine to form what is known as this big long word, trihalometanes. This is a free radical process which is carcinogenic, it's cancer causing. All of the supply from Nina coming out of Coolbawn in Lough Derg, which serves the whole of the Nina area, including the silver mines, including Portrue, is on the remedial action list for these trihalometanes. So I really begs the question, why are you pumping this water to Dublin? Because it's going to have to stay in the pipe at least 1.71 days at a minimum. If I have a drought period, it's going to be in the pipe like last August, it's going to be in the pipe for 30 days. So I don't know what the quality of this water arriving in Dublin, to my estimation as an organic chemist, is going to have a lot of trihalometanes. So I really think that, so that's the problem with the cyanobacteria. So the silver mines and Portrue, who also get the water from Lough Derg, from the Coolbawn treatment plant, they are over the EU limit. They're on 120 and the other one is 113 micrograms per litre. The EU limit is 100 micrograms per litre. So in 2 areas in North Tipperary at the moment, the silver mines and Portrue and also Grottegary, they're over the limit. The whole of the Nina supply is on the remedial action list. This is the water that Uisce Éireann intend pumping to Dublin. So we're in a very serious, it really is, you know, our lake is compromised at the moment. If you reduce the water further with this abstraction, which can be as high as 40% in a drought period, it can go to 65%, you are now increasing the concentration of these nutrients, the nitrates and the phosphates, which cause the plant growth, which is eutrophication. Then you have to break that down with bacteria, which leads to your what you call blue-green algae, which is cyanobacteria. So we're in a very serious situation. I'm living in this area 32 years. I'm 22 years a councillor. The one legacy I do not want to leave is a lake full of algae bloom or cyanobacteria. Because it's just the health reasons for this alone. You know, even in one area of Lough Derg in 1996, we had cyanobacteria in one Castlelock area, dogs ran in, they died, it hit the newspapers. It's also very dangerous to the bird life and all of that. So I hope I've explained to you where I'm coming from, the dangers of this abstraction. It is extremely dangerous. It's an extremely dangerous process. In a lake, for example, in the lake you don't have any THMs because it's flowing all the time. The lake is sitting there a lot of the time. Because agriculture will tell you they don't have the flow of maybe 280 days out of 365 to send the statutory 10 down to Partine Wheeler. Therein lies the problem. Now I want to talk about zebra mussels for a second. Zebra mussels are an invasive species that came in on a ship. We have billions of them. There's 10,000 zebra mussels per square metre. The area of Lockdown is 1,834 kilometres square. Billions, trillions, trillions. So the zebra mussels, yes, they filter the water, but in doing that, you have more photosynthesis, more light goes in, more plant growth. That plant has to die, more bacteria, more cyanobacteria. So you have a double problem. But you also, it's the same problem as Loch Ness, unfortunately. The zebra mussels are extremely dangerous for us as far as the growth of cyanobacteria. Now, the other problem is Ishkay have based everything on Loch Erie, one of the great lakes in North America. They based all their plans on that. But they didn't realise that the larvae from the zebra mussels can get through the grid at the abstraction point and will block every pipe from here to Dublin and also the reservoir at Piedmont. Currently in Loch Erie, I think the government are spending 200 million euros annually just to keep the larvae from trying to get into the pipe. Okay, so I've talked about Loch Ness, I've talked about the trihalometates, I've talked about the zebra mussels. Now, I want to talk as well about as the volume of water is reduced, so that the oxygen concentration absorbed into water decreases exponentially. And that's another big worry for us, because then fish will die. The absorption of water decreases exponentially, so the fish will have less oxygen, fish will die. So any reduction in the volume of water is very serious for us. Okay, I think I've all of that very well covered. Okay, I've covered ecological damage, I've covered all of that. Now, I just want to go through a couple of things on the environmental law. For example, during drought periods, there is a grave danger that this abstraction will breach the Water Framework Directive. It will also breach the Habitats Directive and the Birds Directive. So I suppose the environmental concerns are the main concerns here. For us, we do not want a lake. We want to protect our lake. We want to protect our water. And just on that, and I'll just mention as well, that the Nature Restoration Act requires that 20% of the rivers are restored by 2030 or face large fines. I don't know how Ishkay are going to reach that target, will they be able to pay the fine? Just another important point, the Lower Shannon was refused European life funding because of the state of the Lower Shannon. They said it was so bad, it wasn't worthwhile putting the money into it. So we need massive restoration rather than abstraction. Hi, Alan. Thank you very much, Alan. So now I've just gone through the risks, the environmental risks, I've gone through that. I want to say as well about the public meetings that they're after having. We had it wasn't a public meeting, really, they had information days about community gain. But for us really, as I've explained, it's really community loss. There is no gain for us here. But they held meetings in small little room, Family Resource Centre in Killaloo on the 12th of February. I arrived there with some of my colleagues, we asked some questions. They didn't know basic things like that the water from Ballina and Newport came from the Mulcair River. They thought it came from the Shannon, so that's grand. They didn't know that we didn't have a tertiary treatment in Ballina. They couldn't really explain to us. We asked them several times during the drought period, like last August, 25, only 30 days of our hose pipe ban, will you turn off the pipe? He said, no, we can't turn off the pipe. And I said, but you can't abstract water if we have a drop. Oh, there'll be no abstraction. So I said, are you going to leave the water in the pipe for 30 days? Yeah, so he couldn't answer those kind of basic questions. When I went back a month later to the same building, now it's a small little room. The second time I went back, it was, just 3 men and but I was 4 men and me anyway, so it was grand. But anyway, so I asked a few questions, but he just, every time I asked a question, he said, "Should you know the answer yourself?" Well, look, I said, "Hold on a minute. I didn't drive all the way over here. I wanted to get some information about the pumps." But anyway, they weren't really forthcoming into the information, so that was really a pity. It was a lost opportunity. All right, so why? So just going back, Dublin has a lot of alternatives. For example, there are 6 rivers running between Baldbriggan and Arklow. For some of these, for example, the Avoco has the same flow rate as the Liffey, 20 metres cube per second. They haven't really looked at the south side of the Dublin Mountains, which is Lugnaquilla. And then when the north side is the flow into the Liffey, the south side is into the Slaney. I think they should really look at that as a possible reservoir there, less cost, instead of drawing it all the way 170 kilometres all the way from Ballina to Loup. So Poulaphouca as well has 160 billion litres of water. It's producing 0.2% electricity. Is that really sustainable? And they're better off using the water from Poulaphouca, the Pleasanton Lakes, rather than bringing it all the way. The other thing is then the groundwater. I'm not going to mention leaks for a minute, but the groundwater in Dublin, there's so many aquifers. And then just further out, 30 kilometres to Kildare, and we know this from Mulcair well drilling, because they've tested all the routes. Mulcair well drilling, when they were testing for the old M7, the M7, the current M7. I mean, the amount of aquifers and groundwater in Kildare and in Dublin alone, you know, is massive. Like, to me, it's a much easier solution. So the last but not least solution, I suppose, number 1, fix their leaks, which is 40% of treated water. So, you know, and there are easier solutions now of treating water. You just put in a kind of a sealant. Willie, thank you very much, Willie. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Willie. Thank you very much. It is a much easier solution to fix the leaks rather than, I don't see much point, it doesn't make much common sense to send water all the way from Ballina, treated water, and 40% of it leaking through pipes. I mean, that's going to also create major problems for Dublin if there's such a leakage. And that really hasn't been reduced yet, you know. So, anyway, thank you for your time. I hope I've made sense. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ian Stack. I'm a structural engineer for the concrete and construction industry, and I'm the sort of facts and figures person if anybody has any questions afterwards, you know. But the average flow in the Shannon is the estimate is about 200 cubic metres a second. At Parkeen Basin, downstream of Killaloo, upstream of O'Brien Bridge, where the Shannon is, there's a double weir. The average flow there over the year is 180 cubic metres a second. You know, the article and by law, 10 cubic metres a second is supposed to go down the old Shannon towards Castleconnell for environmental reasons. So the average flow going to the turbines in Ardnacrusha is about 170 cubic metres. Now, in order for Ardnacrusha to run at full blast, it would require 400 cubic metres. So the average generation of electricity in Ardnacrusha is only 42.5% of its capacity, you know, through all the year. But there could be 98 months in a year when you have less than the average flow in the Shannon. And during a lot of that period, Ardnacrusha is actually closed, you know. And if you get a very high flood, like 650 cubic metres a second, like we had a few years ago, you know, they can only send 400 down to Ardnacrusha, and the other 250 goes down to Castleconnell, and everybody in Limerick gets flooded, you know. Well, so anyway, the Irish they're talking about taking 3.8 cubic metres a second from the Shannon, just above Parkeen Weir. Now, and they say, oh, that's only 2%, you know. Well, it's 2% of the 180 total, but 170 of that goes down to generate electricity. So they're going to rob 2.5% of BSB anyway to generate electricity. But 10%, 10 cubic meters is supposed to go down to Castleconnell, and 3.8 out of 10 cubic meters is 38%. You know, that's 2 litres in every 5. You know, that they're going to take in periods of low flow. And the problem with this current proposal is that they're going to pump every day, 24 hours a day, every day of the year. They're going to pump 3.8 cubic meters a second from regardless of what the flow is in the Shannon, you know. And that's what they're going to pump that as a twin 1500 pipe, 2 pipes 1500 diameter, 5 feet. You know, so that means, you know, if one pipe breaks down or needs maintenance, the other one kicks in. You know, so that means it's going to be non-stop because there's 2 pipes. That goes 2 kilometres then to a massive treatment plant. You know, and treatment plants generate sludge. And as Phyllis said, this is one of the dirtiest water in the country, maybe. You know, and it's going to generate massive amounts of sludge. I haven't heard a word from anyone yet about where all that sludge is going to be disposed of. You know, anyway, we leave that aside for the moment. You know, but and from that treatment plant in the Fort Hill region, the water has to be pumped uphill to what they call a break pressure tank near Clough, and that's 37 kilometres. That'll be a 1.7 metre pipe, diameter pipe, you know, and pumped under pressure, which is going to cost money. And there's going to be a big reservoir up there near Clough, the high point. And then from there it's supposed to flow all the way to Dublin. Now, it's because the gradient is less, it's going to take a 2 metre diameter pipe, and that'll be for 132 kilometres. So, you know, they're going to be digging over the bulk of the beer. They're going to be putting in a 6-foot pipe through all sorts of farms and everything, you know, causing all sorts of disruption and so on. You know, that's the plan, you know. But of course, there will actually have to be a booster station as well, because there'll be parts of it where it'll be flat and they'll need to kind of pump it along. You know, it doesn't rely on gravity on its own. You know, so now 3.8 cubic meters a second. You know, that's 330 million litres a day. You know, 2 million bathtubs, I think we rented it was coming up with the train there. You know, that's a lot of water, you know. Now, at the moment, the leaking pipes in Dublin, they're admitting that it's about maybe 210 million litres a day, you know. So that's 2/3 of what they're planning to take from the Shannon. You know, they're going to take water from the Shannon. Expensively treated water now. And 2/3 of it is going to get pissed into the ground, you know. Now, there's talk about, oh yeah, we're going to fix the leaks. There's a projection to reduce the leaks from 210 million litres a day currently to 140 million litres a day by 2050. Now that's a 33% reduction. Well, I don't see that happening at the moment, you know. They haven't even started that, you know, and you know, that's a figure that's pulled out of the sky. But I'd say that there's the hope that can achieve, you know. So the money that, you know, they're talking about 10 billion or whatever it is, and we know from the Children's Hospital that 10 billion could be 100 billion by the time they finish, you know. And who knows what it's going to cost, but whatever it's going to cost, that money would be a lot better spent fixing the leaks, and then you don't have to worry about the Shannon. There's plenty of other sources that's spent near Dublin, you know.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah.
That's probably
Yeah.
someone else.
Hi there, I'm Kevin Hannon, I'm a local angler back in Limerick. So I've been kind of fishing all my life. I had my father before me and his father before him. And the Shannon, the piece of Shannon that I would like to speak about is the piece of river between the dam in Partine and Corbally in Limerick. That's the piece that I feel is affected most by what's going to happen down the road to take more water from it. And we have some information that since 1942 we have flows coming down the Shannon, and the time when they don't have enough water, they're supposed to be off 10 cubic metres down towards Castlecommon, but for quite a lot of the time in drought conditions, they actually cut it back a bit more all the time. Now, we noticed that since Ishka took over in 2014, we have no records. There are absolutely no records. From Partine to the very top of the Shannon, every so often you'll get a water gauge to tell you the level of the water. There are no water gauges from Partine downstream. They don't want us to know the amount of water going down there. Now, I as a fisherman, I can visibly see it. I'm on the river, I'd say, 350 days of the year. I understand the levels of the water in the river. And it's in drought conditions, lads, I can cross the river where I fish in quite a lot of places with a pair of waders on me. And if we go back to the very start in the photograph there, like Shannon said, you can, inside in the middle of Limerick City, I can cross the river in a pair of Wellington boots. And I'm not exaggerating by saying that, if you go back in the picture. Now, if they take more water from us, and they say that we'll get this 10 cubic metres, it just is not going to be viable in drought conditions. They just won't be there. Now, since all this came about, like, I'm going back, when I was young, like, going fishing up where Newell is now. There was ample amount of salmon there then. They're gone. The salmon are gone. 2 days ago, I saw my first salmon of the season. First one. There was one salmon being caught on the Shannon this year so far, that I know, and another one hooked and lost. That is the tragedy of the whole thing. And it all boils down to spawning beds. They're not there anymore. They're all covered in. The Shannon River has come in, and it keep coming in until it finds its level at 10 cubics. It'll end up smaller than the Liffey, because that's what the Shannon is coming. At Newell, I believe that the banks of the river, since I was a young lad, they have come in 60 metres at least. And even the piece of side, as some of our audience here will know, it's just a mass of islands in the shallows. It's just a mass of islands. There's a living bridge in Newell, and when you walk across it, all you see is trees on both sides here. It's absolutely desperate. And what the river needs is more water coming down. 10 cubics is not enough. It really isn't. And we're throwing it down to Arden Crusher to generate a tiny amount of electricity. It just doesn't make sense. And sooner or later, the whole thing is going, it's in a state of collapse at the moment. And IFI don't seem to care about it. They don't put any effort into the river. Like, it is the biggest river in the British Isles, and it's gone to nothing. People don't seem to care, or it's part of our heritage. You know, I'm a boatman as well, and you'd nearly cry sometimes to see the state of the river. Now, we have 2 sewage treatment plants. We have one in the middle of UL. Well, sorry, it's about 200 metres from the front door of UL. And that's 200% overloaded at the moment. So you're really dumping in raw sewage into the river. It's just downstream. It's absolute disgrace. And the reason they're getting upgraded is because the smell was in the front door. And that's the only reason. Other than that, you'll be left with its own devices. So that I think they're spending 45 million quid. But just below them, with the main drainage and everything else, they put in another sewage treatment plant in Bunlicky, just at the cement factory. And the problem there is it's in tidal waters. And when the tide comes back up, all the sewage goes back into Limerick. And because that's highly overloaded as well. So it's like, I learned to swim in the Shannon with a boy. No one swims in the Shannon now, no one. The whole of Limerick learned to swim in the Shannon. The Shannon fields, plastic, Corpley. We learned to swim there. No one will swim that river anymore. It's just not a done thing. If you got a mouthful, you'll probably end up in hospital. And I wouldn't be exaggerating by saying that. But I believe now something has to be done, because there's a lot of us very passionate about it. Like, I'm one of them, and I make no excuse for it. So I leave it there.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah. So we spoke a little bit about kind of breaches. Yesterday I did just a very quick search on kind of a sample of Ishka failures to comply with the Tree Water Acts. We have the Water Pollution Act, the Wastewater Discharge and Regulations Act and the Environmental Protection Act. And there's just a slew of samples. There's hundreds of them. And who's paying the fines? The taxpayers paying the fines on all of those. In fact, there was a very serious recent event in O'Brien's Bridge. The alarms were turned off. There was no protocol followed. The only reason it was found out was because the EPA were out there actually doing an audit. It was a serious public health incident. The HEA were not informed, and there was multiple breaches in terms of how they should have operated the treatment there and the whole process. This is like you'll see there down the offence categories. They're all the same repeating offences, you know. And this is, I suppose my point is, this is somebody that a company we're asking to go to undertake the biggest potential infrastructure project, you know, of this century, to spend upwards of 10 billion euro, which was the most recent figures quoted from the General Attorney, and to take water from like one of our key resources in this country and to pump it up to Dublin. When, like we've mentioned already, there's multiple alternatives, including the fact that you should never be taking, you know, in terms of water, you should never just take water from one source. You should try and vary the sources because of the pathogens, the bacteria in the water. Groundwater is your optimum, your aquifer is your optimum source. It is less pathogens, less bacteria, less risk to the public, less chemicals that you're pumping into it, and as Phil mentioned, less reactions with the chlorides that are put into water. So this is an ongoing issue with Ishka Éireann, you know, and I suppose why this matters politically. When we did our objection, we spent months researching. We went through Ishka Éireann's EIRA, we went through their NIST, we went through all their environmental documents, we went through their climate documents, and I can tell you they were not fit for purpose. There was gaps all over the documentation. We had an ecologist that worked with us on a 40-page presentation. She interrogated all of their ecology reports. They had hand-picked areas around Lough Dergan River, Shannon, where they had done research on, and there was gaps left in other areas where there's, for example, hen harriers, where there's protected species, aquatic species, plant and wildlife. And I suppose the other thing to mention is, like, you don't need to decrease water levels in the lake that much for those shoreline habitats to be impacted and affected. The fishermen up there, we work with Lough Derg anglers. They're part of our umbrella group. There's 1,500 of them. Any of them will tell you they already have a problem up there. Some of them have a problem even getting the boats out, you know. Just in terms of, hopefully the slide will move on for me, why this kind of matters politically. We feel that its current presentation, which has gone to on board Planola, okay, we know that, and we wish that there had been, like we said earlier, those independent reports published. Where is that Wallenberg report? Why could you not FOI that report and bring it into the public domain in the way that it should have been? It was a commissioned report and it was never made public, and why was that? Ishka had problems around data Ishka Éireann produced. There's been several other issues in terms of getting exacting data, and I'm going to talk about a very important report that was published yesterday by the CRU, and it deals with leakages, okay? But just for the moment, we're in breach potentially of 5 European directives here, okay, including Habitat, Water Framework Directive, Birds Directive, and so forth. There's high risks of legal challenge and delay here, which is going to cost money. We have, from the data we have from Icarus and from Met Éireann and Copernicus, we're going to experience droughts in Ireland every 2 years now. That's the prediction. So, and droughts aren't just in summertime. We have periods right throughout the 12 months when there's going to be droughts. They have not taken into consideration climate change. That is the elephant in the room here. This project might have made some kind of sense in some level 15 years ago. 2026, it doesn't make sense anymore, okay? Once we've had 4 months of continuous rain, it's being right, we're also going to experience the extremes in the summer as well, okay? So the other thing, I suppose, is the regional concerns. The impact from such an important cultural river, you know what I mean, important in terms of drinking water, important in terms of the life on the river, the swimmers, the fishermen, the people that use that river every day, the people that love and enjoy that river, you know what I mean, it'll be a much diminished resource, and that's a huge concern. So there's a kind of regional equity concern there, you know what I mean. Again, you know, all of the investment going east of the country and potentially not enough investment coming to the west of the country. And I'm not trying to present this as an us versus them scenario. I'm just talking about the reality of the situation. We all need the water. Trust me, we all need the water. The long-term state liability for cost and environmental damage as this goes on. Those estimated costs of up to 10 billion, that doesn't include ongoing maintenance costs and the cost of this project as we roll forward on it, you know. There's a couple of projects then I just wanted to kind of just refer to. Let me get this slide going here. So there's a number of projects around the world that people may or may not be familiar with, and maybe some of the names will kind of trigger some memory, you know. There's, for example, in America, there's the Colorado River. In Spain, there is the Ebro River. In California, there's the Delta Diversion. We had the Murray-Darling instance also. These are all failed projects. They're projects, some of them were where they diverted river or they extracted large amounts of water similar to what Ishgaren and Plankton, and there was complete ecosystem collapse. Never again to go back. You cannot go back from this. And I'm not talking about a single one incident. I'm talking about a slow collapse over a number of years. The water goes, the fish die. Those fish are gone. They don't come back when you put the water back in, you know, when that flow goes up again. This is a slow iterative process, but essentially you're talking about entire ecosystem collapse. And we believe, as a group, collectively, that that's what we're potentially facing into here. So, hopefully this will come up. So I want to talk about the CRU report that was brought out yesterday. Now, everybody here is familiar with Ishka-Éireann telling us how much they've fixed the leaks in Dublin over the last number of years. According to the CRU report yesterday, only 0.4% of the pipes are actually fixed every year. In other words, they're doing a find and replace strategy instead of a mains replacement strategy, which is what needs to happen. We have told them going back years, Emma Kennedy, who's a consultant in Tipperary, is a member of our group, she has stated this to Ishka-Éireann, this is not going to work. In other words, if I put that into a timeline context for you, it's going to take 200 years going on the current projected timeline that it will take Ishka-Éireann to fix the pipes in Dublin. As we know, the percentage leakage is under 40%. So leakage actually went up in 2022, 2023 and 2024. It didn't go down. So that's really important. So like I said, the rate really needs to be 1.2%, okay? They need to be hitting 1.2% of pipe replacement in Dublin in order to kind of meet some kind of target over the next 30, 40 years. The other thing I suppose to mention is just around, you know, the timeline on this. Like this project, they're looking, it's not to road and all, if they're looking to kind of kick this off with say in 2 or 3 years' time. You know, it'll take 4 years to build. It's only planned to 2050. And then what? 15 years, 10 billion plus euros, 2050. And then what? There's no plan after that. That's it. Anyway, thanks folks. Yeah.
Just have a quick, first of all, thank you so much for coming in
Sorry,
here.
Shannon, I just want
Oh, yeah,
to
yours,
finish
Rachel.
up. One more thing to go on. The left of the go. Finish it. Because I appreciate everybody. There's a lot to take in. I'm a poster. I shouldn't have all this information. But unfortunately, I've had to go and learn it, okay? But there's people in this room that are representing people, particularly in the lower Shannon. The lower Shannon, the mighty Shannon is on its knees. Before we give a drop of water to anybody. We haven't got the water to give to anybody, and Dublin doesn't need the water. When this project was dreamt up in 2007-2008, RPS consultants were hired by Dublin City Council to find a water supply for Dublin. They were based on pre-COVID population trends. COVID changed everything. People are working from home, they don't have to drive into cities, there's full blocks of office blocks in Dublin empty. This was all designed in pre-COVID time. But nobody is shouting stop. Thankfully, we have come together, Limerick, Clare and Tipperary have come together to try and stand up for the mighty Shannon. There's a few things I just want to point out. We are in a stressed environment water-wise for 8 months in the year. We have drought 8 months in the year. So when we're told, the narrative said, we're only taking 2% of the water, that's absolutely ridiculous thing to say. But that's the narrative that's got out there. We're here to try and redress the wrong narrative that got out there. I remember one time I was in New York, it was during the Iraq War, and there was a sticker on the back of a taxi driver. What's our oil doing under their sand? That's the narrative that we've been listening to. The Shannon is belonging to everybody in this room. Absolutely everybody. We're here to try and protect it. Now this is going to commission and all at the moment. It's in the system, it's there. There's not a whole lot you can do about it now, but what you can take away from this is that Dublin is leaking 330 million litres of treated water into the ground. Ishgare have done nothing to address that. In fact, they've gone backwards. Okay? This is what we're dealing with. If you take 300 million litres of water from Partine into Tipperary, which is protected by 2 of the heaviest EU directives that you'll get, that water will pump straight into the ground and go into the Stanley. So we're pumping the Shannon into the Stanley. The last thing in this. Now what happens in Commission and all that, and I believe that what we put in, we have everybody that works with us, hydrologists, environmentalists, barristers, solicitors, are working for free. Absolute for nothing. We haven't paid a penny out to anyone because we haven't got a penny to give to anyone. So we're here off our own buck, off our own back, to try and protect our environment. That's all we're trying to do. I really appreciate everyone's time. And by the way, we're trying to think logically, why is this happening? What's the gain in this? And we're fearing privatisation because it's a mighty amount of water. And anyone that looks at privatisation of the water industry, just look at Thames Water. Yeah. The shareholders are getting the money, and the services have gone down. I want to thank everybody for your time. I want to thank Sharon for giving us the time, for giving us the day to come up here. It's great to be here amongst fantastic people that are representing everyone. But we're here to try and protect the mighty Shannon. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank Ava, Shady, Phil, DA and Kevin for coming in this afternoon. You certainly have educated me in relation to this project. I wasn't aware that Ishgare was going to become the Robin Hood of the River Shannon. So can we, does anybody want to ask some questions here too?
I just want to thank everyone. I just chair a committee now.
No problem.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm Eamon Murphy, Social Democrats Policy Director. Can you make the slides available to people who are here? There's a lot of information there, and I can write it all down.
Sharon has.
I said no.
Sharon has some, yeah.
Anything else?
Would you make a motion? Thanks very much.
That's it.
Thanks.
Will you, sir?
Kevin, you mentioned figures from 2014.
Yes.
Have you actually reviewed the issue of figures?
just like, well, all the figures are there, but they just stopped giving out the figures. They don't want anyone to know about what's happening. Zeros.
The zeros.
All the figures are there since 1932, I think.
Yeah.
The page was there, and as soon as this area came into the equation, they shut it down. It's like I said, there are no water gauges from the dam in Hartine all the way to Limerick. It's quite a section of water. Like, you know, I think there's 6 rivers joining the Shannon from the dam. The Black River, the Kildastulla, the Roaring River, the Mulcair, the Blackwater, and the Avon the Longshore. They all supply a little bit of water to the river, and they help to dilute the river. Really, they're probably cleaner than the water that's coming in at Partine, because you know, it's terrifying that they can get away with that. And I called IFI. It was last year. I just came up one day and went to my boat. My boat had gone another 3 or 4 meters out. I had to push it back into the water. So I rang IFI. The only one I could contact on the day. I said, "There's a big problem. They've cut the level of the water, and that's in the lower Shannon from 10 down to whatever it was, probably 2 or 3 cubics, which is only a couple of bathfuls." And she didn't ring me back that day, but she rang me back the following day to say the ESP are having a problem with the gates above. Now this went on for 3 days. But the damage that, see, people don't realise that once the river goes down in shallow areas, it really closes in the river, and all that riverbed is left exposed. And all the life, and the fly life, the nymphs and the larvae, and everything else that lives there, that dies in the sun. There's no water there anymore. That dies, and it's never taken into account. And all those little insects and things, they're as important to salmon, because they don't recover that easy. You know, once they're dead, they're dead, and it takes years and years to build that back up again. It's actually like a major pollution incident. You know, you just can't do that. It's a big river, and they think not to. They wouldn't even inform you that this is going to happen. But I know they have a problem, the engineering problem up the river. But let's get it right. If they're going to do something, get it right, and don't be causing all this desolation further down. Like I'm only one guy fishing, but I can see the damage being done to the river as it stands at the moment. And it's like Elaine said, this is a slow process. Now, the river's been getting closed in since 1932 since the Shannon scheme. And you can't just shut down now and crush it overnight and shove all that water down, because at this stage, because the river has built up and is silted up, it would just overflow the banks. You wouldn't be able to take the amount of water if the Shannon came down in a big flood. Armor crushing was shut down. The old course of the Shannon at this stage couldn't take the amount of water. They couldn't take it.
It would have to be brought back over
Yeah,
a number of years.
it would take years
Yeah.
to bring the Shannon back again, and they'd have to build banks. But at some stage, Armor crushing is 100 years old now, past its sell-by date. So something's going to have to happen in the future.
And in the States, like concrete structures, they only give them 70 years, like here at 99 years here, you know?
Just explain that, Willie, this, the date, give the date, shows it, you understand it, fine, thank you.
Anybody else got any questions?
Just first of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming in. I can see you're very passionate about what you talk about in fairness to you, and we've always said local knowledge is very important, which it is, and I'm very close to where the whole thing is happening myself. I suppose the environmental impact we reckon is bad at the moment, and feel you outlined it there on your briefing. What do you fear could happen in the future?
My biggest worry is, because Loch Derg is only 1/3 the size of Loch Lane, and the abstraction will be for, 2.7 million as opposed to, whatever, 1 million people in Northern Ireland. So it's 3 times the danger. So there's a 9 times chance that we will have the blue-green bacteria much faster than Loch Lane. Because we're 1/3 the size, and Loch Lane is only abstracted for 40% of 2 million. We'll be abstracting for 50% of 5.7 million, 2.7 million. So there's 9 times. We will have the blue-green bacteria 9 times faster than Loch Lane. Therein lies the danger. In Loch Lane at the moment, you cannot fish, you cannot swim, you cannot go into that water. They're still taking the water out of it, unfortunately, I don't know what they're treating it with, but by golly gosh, if you take that water out of Loch Lane, you will need some amount of chlorine, you will have some amount of trihalomethanes, which are carcinogenic. So God help them.
And just one quick point for Karen. Why do you think she's gone to this since she's gone to as regards the fishing in the North Shannon?
You see, it's very easy to say that the water level is the problem. Like, as far as salmon is concerned, there are lots of problems. There are problems with climate change, there are problems with smolts going back to the ocean, there are problems with pollution, it's getting worse definitely. The level of the water is coming down, there hasn't the same spawning areas to do anymore. You know, the gravels aren't right because they've closed in so much. So now that's only the salmon. And the eels are slowly getting worse and worse. Like for years and years, the ESB in Killaloo, for instance, they had nets there and they connected their eels every October, November in the nets. And the ones that escaped then went down by Ireland Crush and got turned up inside in the turbine going down. Major problem. So over the years, that really hammered the eel fishing. And now what they're doing is they're catching the fish because there were pressure brought to bear on the ESB. They're catching the eels October, November in the same net. And they're taking them downstream below Ireland Crush and releasing them there. Now, I don't know whether, you see, these things have to be measured over the long term. It's not going to be an overnight solution to any of these problems. And like there's weirs and dams, they're the one thing that fish don't like. They've been stopped going upstream no matter where it is. I know there's plans to put a new fish passing party in for the salmon, but the horse is gone. The fish are not there anymore. They're going to spend an enormous amount of money on the fish pad. I believe something in the region of 140 million euros. But I think myself...
Basically, but they lost funding from the EU Life project because they felt it was pointless.
Should have been done 40 years ago.
Yes, thanks Shannon, and thanks for posting today, and thanks to Shamie and Phil and colleagues. I can see your passion there. I know I've raised it numerous times in all myself in the past. I just want to, like Sir David and I was dealing with a crowd here that are just Canada, bring over and set them up. They used to come into us here, say, well, they used to come in about once a month, whole team, to answer questions. They could never answer a question, like you said earlier, or Phil said it. And they stopped coming in. They used to come in, I think once a month or once every 2 months. Tops, heads of them, that was all stopped. And there was no way of us getting answers because they're just out there. I know several people that are in fear of their life regarding payments from them. They're not paying people either in timely fashion or anything like it. Could I ask one question? And as the point of that is what I heard, Shamie is somebody that can clarify. The IFA and the farm organisations and the number of farmers that have signed up to that. How many signed up and pay out money? And that's what, pay out money. But there's no planning and no specialising. Where's that at? What do you think?
Well, look, come here. The IFA's role, like any union, is to get a deal, probably the best deal it can get. And what's extraordinary about this is that 400 farmers out of the 500 landowners, 400 landowners out of 500 landowners have signed up to this. Okay, there's been 167 million euros paid out already for a project that hasn't got planning permission and hasn't got an abstraction license. Okay, because there was an early bird deal given to the farmers. I saw the documents that came. There's an early bird deal. So there's a former Fianna Fáil councillor sitting in Clough after getting a payment. He doesn't want the project. He's no intention of allowing a pipe through it. He's been paid, and he's allowed me to say that. This is the scandal of this, where we have wastewater treatment plants in towns and villages in every part of our area under stress. We can't build houses because of it. But Ishki Éireann have a blank cheque for this. Okay, 167 million to be paid already to farmers for a project that has no planning permission and no abstraction license.
Is that full final payment to those?
No, 25%.
Yeah. So 100 landowners that refuse access, they'll probably have to be CPO. But I know from projects that have gone on like this, the motorway project between Borhill and Limerick, the landowners are asked to be paid. I can assure you that. Yeah. For the ones that have to be CPO and that. This thing is going to burst the country economically. There's no doubt about it. This thing will burst the country, will destroy us environmentally, but it will burst the country. If the National Children's Hospital still hasn't been finished, is that This thing started at 700 million euros, this project.
Yeah.
They've given a figure of anything between 60 and 10. There's consultants rubbing their hands together at the moment, trying to get on board with this. And by the way, we saw the environmental impact statement that was sent into Portmanala, 1,067 pages on it. They only did a part run on part E as a city. They only did a part EIR on it. Part. We hired a hydrologist and an ecologist for nothing. This is a 40-page report that blew their reports out of the water. I cannot see it in Commission on Penala given this plan permission. So the reason we're here is we wanted to show the other side. The narrative is obviously we're only taking 2% of the water. It's fierce important for us to be here. Willie, the picture, look at that. That's what it is. We're in a drought situation in the Midwest 8 months of the year. 8 months of the year. That's what we're going to get 8 months of the year. That's before you take 330 million litres of water. Okay?
There is a photograph, Patty, I might point out, very, very similar to that. And you might be able to see that in the background. It's over my finger, a corridor falls, the mighty falls, but the Shannon comes down. But the photograph is recent, we haven't been honest now. There's a guy in the middle of that, sitting in a chair looking at the river after the corridor. And I don't mean to say that that's the depth of the water. It's more than 1.5 feet where he was sitting in the chair. And they're just absolutely crazy that they're taking more water from it.
Centenary Bar.
I'm sorry, just before you come in, I just want to add one other thing. There was a channel dug from Partine to serve agriculture, just to give you a bit of context. That has to get 10 cubic metres of water, okay? If that doesn't get it, and the people will say, why don't we just shut off agriculture and all the rest of it? The banks of that collapse, okay? That has to get, because the banks are kept up by the water. So if that doesn't get that amount of water, the banks collapse. So this is massive. The banks collapse. So they can't just turn off agriculture. So to take the water from there. Sorry, no.
Senator Marie, thanks very much, Sharon, for organising and welcome to all. Sorry I was a bit late, I was at a committee meeting, but what I suppose I've heard about it before from Kevin and from Phil and from Kay McGuinness as well, I know is involved with it, and certainly they've been highlighting it. You brought it here to show the other side, and I know it's with on board Canola, so there isn't a lot, as you said to yourselves, that we can do at the moment. But what can we do for you going forward besides highlighting it, bringing it to the Minister's attention, asking the questions? Is there anything else you can think of that we can do to support you?
First of all, I would like independent survey of all the other alternatives that are available around Dublin, which I explained. You know, the 10 rivers that are running from Bordbridge to Arklow, the south side of Dublin Aquila, which flows into the Slaney bit of reservoir there. They're the two biggest flows, water, etc. Also, I'd like to ask, where's the 10 billion coming from? Where's this 10? Is this going to be 70 billion? Is that like the where's this money coming from? The other question is, I'd like to know, where's the Shannon going to get the money by 2030 for 20% restoration, Nature Restoration Act? 20% of the rivers have to be restored by 2030. So we're going to keep abstracting for places. It's only going downhill. You can see here, since 1932, they couldn't even let the statutory 10 cubic metres down Partine Weir, which really Partine Weir needs about 120 to 180 cubic metres to keep it alive. I don't know how they agreed in 32 to give it 10, and they couldn't even keep to the 10.
And it needs about 70 plus cumex to be gone down there really to get some kind of restoration back in that.
There is one thing we can all take out of here today that we can actually do, and actually the EPA have no strength. They've no teeth to taking on the pollution of our rivers. We have gone from 500 rivers in this country of excellent quality to 20. We're being fined 19,000 euros a day by the European Court of Justice for our lack of water quality. The one thing we can all take out of here today, give the EPA teeth or close down the EPA. Now, I have to say, we as a group, as I said, I'm a postman, I should be enjoying out in the lovely weather today. But I dedicate my life now to protect our rivers. Nina River's in trouble. That's what I'm going to do after I retire. The EPA we need to look at the law, at the strength that the EPA can only find a creamery at town. You saw what happened in Cork. You know, EPA have no teeth. We need to go in and talk, anyone that's on environmental groups in the Dáil, We need to give teeth to the EPA, or else close down the EPA and start again, because at the end of the day, the EPA can only fine Ishmael and 1,000 euros or whatever. And by the way, we all blame, like to blame farmers for the lack of water quality. It's our councils. There was a pipe in Ballycommon, an illegal outlet pipe from a house in the state of Ballycommon, pumping water into the main river. The council knew about it. I got it closed down. I should have to be doing things to that. But that's what I'm saying. The EPA have no strength. Give them the strength. Give them the proper fines. And one other thing I would say is, every council that we're all responsible for have outlet pipes going into the rivers. There's no monitoring of that going on. I'm walking rivers. Thanks to the job we have fishermen. They're the ones telling me what's going on. Outlet pipe. If there's pipes going into rivers, should have cameras on them to see when stuff is going.
Okay,
The other thing, just sorry to mention, is like, you know, you can't ask a dull question to Ishka. You know what I mean? You need to ask the bigger question. Why are you not in control here?
Yeah.
If taxpayers' money is going to be spent, why are ye as ministers and senators not in control here? Why is the Waterford report not put in the public domain? And I would ask that that is put in the public domain. And why an independent judicial review? In other words, why we didn't follow due process even around the public spending codes, okay? That was bypassed. And why was that bypassed?
finally, just Natalie, last minute, you're okay? Darren, I have to stop now. Thank you so much. We make this video, it's all being recorded today, and it'll be on YouTube for you later on. But thank you all for attending today, and thanks.